"The Apache Maid quit after seeing me with another woman," I whispered. "I only love you." The sun hung low over the quiet town, casting a warm golden light across the dusty streets. The little inn at the edge of town had stood for years, its wooden sign creaking softly in the breeze. Inside, the air smelled of fresh bread and wood smoke, a comforting scent that promised a brief escape from the harshness of the outside world. It was here, amid the simple routines of the inn, that he first saw her. She moved with a quiet grace that seemed to belong more to the wind than to the earth. Her hair, dark and thick, fell in soft waves down her back, catching the sunlight in a way that made it shine almost like strands of midnight silk. She wore a simple dress, modest but neat, and her hands moved with practiced ease as she carried a tray of steaming tea to a table. She was an Apache Maid, though her appearance did not announce it loudly. There was no need. Her presence was enough. He had come to the town for reasons that were practical and simple, yet his life had recently felt heavy with questions that had no answers. The inn seemed like a refuge, a place where he could rest without the noise of the outside world. When he saw her, though, there was a strange stirring in his chest, something unfamiliar, but not unwelcome. It was a quiet pull, a gentle tug at the corners of his heart, that made him take notice of her in a way he rarely noticed anyone. She noticed him too, though her reaction was more cautious. Her eyes, dark and sharp, measured him with careful attention. She had seen many travelers come and go, men and women alike, each with their own story and their own burdens. She had learned to read people quickly, to notice the ones who were genuine and the ones who were not. He was different. There was a steadiness in his eyes, a quiet sincerity that made her pause. At first, their interactions were brief and polite. She would offer him water when he seemed thirsty, a plate of food when he lingered too long at the inn. He, in turn, would nod his thanks, sometimes offering a smile, which she returned with a slight tilt of her head. It was not much, but it was enough to build a fragile connection, a small bridge between two lives that had so far traveled separate paths. He found himself lingering in the common room more often than he needed to, pretending to read a worn book or write in a journal while actually watching her move about her tasks. He admired the way she carried herself with quiet confidence, how every action seemed deliberate and graceful, yet effortless. There was a strength in her that went beyond the physical. It was in the way she met the world with open eyes, the way she navigated life with dignity even when it was difficult. One afternoon, as the sun began to dip behind the hills, casting long shadows across the town, he found himself standing near the kitchen door. She was arranging plates for the evening meal, her hands moving rhythmically, almost like a dance he could not take his eyes off. He wanted to speak, to say something that would make her notice him, yet the words felt trapped in his throat. Instead, he simply watched, allowing himself to enjoy the small, quiet moments that made her presence so captivating. She glanced up and caught his gaze. For a moment there was a flicker of surprise in her eyes, quickly replaced by a soft, almost imperceptible smile. It was brief, but it sent a strange warmth through him, a sensation he had not felt in years. It was a small acknowledgement, nothing more, but it was enough to make him feel seen in a way he rarely did. As days passed, their interactions grew slightly more frequent. He began to offer small gestures, holding the door open for her, helping carry a heavy bundle of firewood, or simply sharing a quiet word during the early morning. She, in turn, began to respond, her initial caution slowly giving way to a gentle curiosity. They never spoke of their pasts, of the lives they had left behind, but there was an unspoken understanding forming between them, a silent recognition that perhaps their paths had crossed for a reason. He learned to read her moods like a carefully written map. When her eyes sparkled, it meant she was in a good mood, and he would find an excuse to linger nearby. When her brow furrowed, it meant she was tired or worried, and he would give her space while quietly wishing he could do more to ease her burden. Each small gesture, each fleeting glance, seemed to carry weight, as though their connection existed in a language spoken without words. There were moments, too, when she revealed pieces of herself without realizing it. A laugh at something simple, a joke he told, a clumsy mishap with a tray of food, was like music, ringing softly in his ears long after it had passed. He noticed the way her hands moved when she was deep in thought, the way her lips pressed together when she was concentrating. Every detail became a thread, weaving a tapestry of who she was in his mind, making her presence feel indispensable. One evening, as the inn quieted down and the last guests retreated to their rooms, he found himself walking toward the small garden behind the building. She was there, tending to a patch of herbs and flowers, the scent of lavender and rosemary mingling with the cool evening air. He hesitated, unsure if he should disturb her, but something inside him urged him forward. "Beautiful night," he said softly, his voice barely louder than the whisper of the wind through the leaves. She looked up, startled at first, then smiled faintly. "Yes," she replied, her voice calm and steady, carrying a hint of warmth he could feel even from a distance. He stepped closer, careful not to crowd her. "I mean, it's peaceful," he added, trying to sound casual, though his heart raced in a way he had not expected. She nodded, returning to her work with the herbs, yet he noticed the way she glanced at him from the corner of her eye. There was a tension there, a cautious interest. And it gave him hope that perhaps she felt something too. As the sun finally disappeared behind the horizon, leaving the sky painted in shades of orange and purple, he realized he did not want to leave. Not tonight, not any night. There was something about her, something that went beyond appearances, beyond the simplicity of her tasks, that called to him. It was a quiet, steady pull, like the tide against the shore, impossible to ignore. She, too, felt a strange connection, though she would not have admitted it to anyone. Something about this man was different from the travelers she had seen before. He was patient, kind, and unobtrusive, yet he had a quiet presence that made the world feel more vivid. She found herself stealing glances, wondering what he was thinking, whether he would speak to her again, whether he would even notice if she lingered a moment longer. That night, as the inn grew silent and the soft glow of lamps lit the rooms, they each retreated to their own thoughts. He thought of her constantly, replaying the brief interactions of the day, memorizing the tilt of her head, the sound of her laugh, the softness in her eyes. She, in turn, thought of him with a mix of curiosity and caution, unsure of what these feelings meant, yet unable to deny the growing stirrings in her heart. By the time sleep claimed them, an invisible thread had begun to tie their lives together. It was subtle, almost imperceptible, but it was real. A connection formed in stolen glances, in quiet gestures, in the unspoken understanding that they had found something rare in one another. And so the days passed, each one bringing them closer, though neither fully realized how significant their bond had already become. What had started as simple observation and polite gestures was slowly growing into something deeper, a promise of companionship, understanding, and perhaps in time, love. Little did they know, the challenges ahead would test this fragile connection, forcing them to confront fears, misunderstandings, and emotions they had never dared to explore. But for now, in this quiet corner of the world, the seed had been planted, and the first chapter of their story had begun. Days passed in the quiet town, and the bond between him and the Apache Maid slowly began to grow. He continued to notice her from afar, admiring the way she moved with such grace and purpose. She, in turn, had begun to notice him more openly. A fleeting smile here, a small nod there, small gestures that spoke volumes without a single word. Yet, as is often the way in life, happiness can be fragile, and misunderstandings can grow like weeds if left unchecked. It happened one bright morning. The town square was alive with activity. Children ran in the dust, merchants shouted the prices of their wares, and the scent of fresh bread and sweet pastries floated through the air. He had stepped out to take care of some errands, his thoughts preoccupied with mundane matters, yet his mind wandered constantly to her. As he walked past the fountain in the center of the square, he noticed a young woman carrying a basket of herbs. She was cheerful and friendly, someone he had met once before in passing. She stopped him with a polite smile. "Good morning. I thought you might like some fresh basil for your meals." "The garden is full this time of year." He smiled back, thanking her, and took the basket. Their conversation was brief but pleasant, filled with the usual small talk one exchanges with neighbors and townsfolk. It was entirely innocent, yet from a distance someone else was watching. The Apache Maid had been running an errand nearby. As she turned a corner, she saw him standing by the fountain with the other woman. They were laughing softly together, leaning slightly closer than she had expected. A strange knot tightened in her stomach. Her heart beat faster, and a cold sensation spread through her chest. She stopped in her tracks, unsure of what to do. Her first instinct was to turn away, to leave quietly before he saw her. But she couldn't. She watched them for a few more moments, trying to understand what she was seeing, trying to make sense of the sudden surge of hurt she felt. Every laugh, every glance between them seemed amplified, though in reality it was nothing more than a friendly exchange. Her mind raced with questions.
Had she misread him all this time? Had the smiles and small gestures been meaningless?
Her pride and heart battled with each other, and she felt the weight of her emotions pressing down. She wanted to confront him, to demand an explanation, but the fear of humiliation and rejection held her back. The young woman finally waved and walked away, leaving him alone by the fountain. He called out after her politely, then turned his gaze toward the street, only to find that the Apache Maid was no longer there. She had disappeared. Retreating into the shadows, her mind made up. By the time he returned to the inn, he noticed immediately that she was distant. The warm smile he had grown accustomed to was gone, replaced by polite nods and careful movements. She avoided his gaze, her eyes often fixed on the floor or on the work in front of her. He tried to speak to her, to start a conversation as usual, but she gave only short, clipped responses. Days went by, and her behavior did not change. She was quiet, reserved, and distant, as if a wall had been built between them overnight. He noticed the shift immediately and felt a heavy weight in his chest. He could not understand why she had suddenly grown cold, and it pained him deeply. He tried small gestures to reach out to her. He carried extra water to her station, offered to help with chores, and even left small gifts of fresh fruit or flowers on her table. Yet each gesture was met with polite, almost stiff acknowledgement. There was no warmth, no spark, no hint of the connection they had begun to build. One evening he found her sitting alone in the small garden behind the inn, the same place where they had first spoken quietly together. The sun had just begun to set, casting long shadows and painting the sky in shades of orange and purple. He approached slowly, unsure if she would even look at him. She did notice him, but her expression remained guarded. "Good evening," he said softly, trying to keep his voice calm. "Good evening," she replied, her tone flat, lacking the warmth that once lingered there. He sat a short distance away, unsure how to begin. The silence stretched between them, heavy and uncomfortable. Finally he spoke, trying to sound gentle. "You've been quiet these past few days. Did I do something to upset you?" Her eyes flickered, just for a moment, betraying the emotions she tried to hide. She looked away and tightened her grip on her hands. "No, it's nothing," she murmured. But he knew better. He had seen enough to know that something was wrong. "I feel like something has changed," he said carefully. "I don't understand. Have I offended you in some way?" She shook her head slightly as if to deny it, but her silence spoke louder than any words. The misunderstanding had taken root, and it seemed impossible to untangle. He wanted to explain, to tell her the truth, but he hesitated. He did not want to overwhelm her, and he feared that any words he spoke would only make things worse. The next morning, he decided he could wait no longer. He sought her out as she went about her work, hoping for even a brief chance to speak. She noticed him and froze, her hands stilling for a moment before she continued with her tasks. He approached slowly, his heart pounding, and spoke as softly as he could. "I saw you yesterday," he said. "And I want you to know I would never hurt you. What you saw wasn't what you think." Her hands trembled slightly as she arranged the plates before her. I don't know," she said, her voice barely above a whisper. I thought you cared for her, not me." He shook his head quickly. No, it was a misunderstanding. The woman you saw was just a friend, someone I met earlier. I care about you, and only you. She looked at him, her eyes searching his face, looking for any hint of deceit. For a moment it seemed as though the walls around her heart might soften, but the memory of what she had seen made her hesitate. Pride and fear battled with trust, and she felt trapped between the desire to believe him and the sting of what she thought had happened. The tension between them grew heavier as the days passed. She tried to focus on her work, keeping busy with the inn's chores, but her thoughts kept drifting back to him. She wondered if he truly meant what he said, if his words were sincere, or if they were just empty promises to soothe her hurt. He, too, struggled with the distance that had grown between them. Every glance she cast his way, every small gesture of politeness, felt like both hope and a reminder of the gap that had formed. He could not bear the thought of losing her, yet he feared that any push to explain further might only drive her away. One afternoon, unable to contain himself any longer, he followed her after she finished her work. She was walking quietly toward the edge of town, carrying a small bundle of her belongings. His heart sank as he realized she might be leaving, deciding to quit the inn entirely. "Wait!" he called out, his voice breaking slightly with urgency. She froze and turned slowly, her eyes wary and guarded. "Please, don't go just yet. I need to explain." Her gaze held his for a long moment filled with a mixture of anger, hurt, and confusion. Finally she spoke, her voice trembling. "Why should I listen?" "You were with her yesterday. How can I believe anything you say?" He took a deep breath, steadying himself. "Because it was never what it looked like. I swear, you are the only one I care about. I only love you." For a moment the world seemed to hold its breath. The wind rustled through the trees, carrying the soft scent of flowers, and the town square felt distant and quiet. She looked at him, truly looked at him, as if trying to see the truth hidden in his eyes. The honesty, the fear, and the sincerity were all there, undeniable. She did not speak immediately. Instead, she turned away, struggling with her emotions. Pride, hurt, and hope warred within her, leaving her uncertain of what to do next. She wanted to believe him, wanted to trust him, but the fear of being hurt again held her back. He did not press, did not demand an answer. He simply stayed there, quietly, patiently, giving her the space she needed while showing that he was not going anywhere. His presence, calm and steadfast, began to chip away at the wall she had built around her heart. That evening, she returned to the inn but remained distant. She did not speak much, and her eyes rarely met his. Yet there was a subtle change, a small softening in her expression, a slight hesitation before she turned away. It was not reconciliation, not yet, but it was a start. He watched her quietly, understanding that trust could not be forced. He could only be there, patient and consistent, showing her through his actions that his words were true. And though the misunderstanding had shaken them both, the seed of their connection had not been destroyed. It still lived, quietly, waiting for the moment when it could grow again. The days following the misunderstanding were heavy with silence. The Apache Maid moved through her work at the inn with practiced efficiency, but every step she took carried the weight of unspoken emotions. Her hands performed the chores, her eyes scanned the tasks before her, yet her mind was elsewhere, thinking of him, of what she had seen in the town square, of the whispered words he had spoken, promising that he only cared for her. He, too, felt the strain. Each time he caught a glimpse of her from across the room, he felt the ache of distance that had suddenly appeared between them. He tried small gestures, carrying water, arranging plates, even offering a gentle word or smile. But each time he was met with quiet acknowledgement and then retreat. The warmth that had once blossomed between them seemed trapped behind a wall he could not break. He had grown accustomed to her presence, even in its silence. Watching her move through the inn, seeing the way she tended to her work with such care, made him realize just how deeply he had come to care for her. It was not just affection, not just admiration. It was something deeper, something he had not felt in years. And now, with the misunderstanding creating distance between them, he felt a desperate need to reach her, to make her understand the truth before it was too late. One late afternoon, he finally decided he could wait no longer. The inn was quiet, most of the guests having left for the day. The golden light of the setting sun spilled through the windows, casting long shadows across the room. He found her in the kitchen placing bowls of soup on the table, her movements precise, almost mechanical. He stepped inside quietly, pausing for a moment before speaking. "I need to talk to you," he said, his voice steady but soft. She did not look up immediately, her hands continuing their work. "Please," he added, "just for a few minutes." Her hand stilled, and she turned slowly to face him. There was a hardness in her eyes, a mixture of hurt and suspicion. "I don't know if talking will help," she said carefully. You've already shown me something I didn't expect." "I know," he replied, his tone filled with both apology and urgency. "And I want to explain. I don't want you to leave or to think I don't care, because I do. I care more than I can say." Her eyes narrowed slightly and she crossed her arms, trying to shield herself from the vulnerability that threatened to surface. "You were with her," she said quietly.
"And I saw it. I saw you laughing and talking."
"How am I supposed to believe anything you say now?" He stepped closer, careful not to crowd her, his heart pounding in his chest. "It wasn't what it looked like," he said. "The woman you saw, she is just a relative. Someone I have known for years. There's nothing between us." "I swear, you are the only one I care about." For a moment, she said nothing. Her eyes searched his face, looking for any sign of deceit, any hint that he might not be telling the truth. She wanted to believe him, wanted to trust him, but the hurt she had felt burned too brightly to let go so easily. Her pride, her fear, and her heart all fought with one another, leaving her uncertain of what to do next. "I don't know if I can believe you," she admitted finally, her voice trembling slightly. "You say that, but how can I be sure?" He took a deep breath, steadying himself. "I can't force you to believe me," he said gently. "All I can do is be honest and show you that I mean it. I only love you." The words hung in the air, soft and heavy at the same time. She looked at him, truly looked at him, and for the first time in days, she saw the raw sincerity in his eyes. It was there, in the way his hands trembled slightly, in the set of his shoulders, in the quiet intensity of his gaze. He was not trying to manipulate her or win her over with fancy words. He was simply telling the truth. Her chest tightened as conflicting emotions swirled inside her. Part of her wanted to throw herself into his arms, to believe him completely and let go of the hurt she had felt. Another part, the part that had built walls around her heart, urged caution, warning her not to trust so easily, not to be hurt again. He took another step closer, lowering his voice to a gentle whisper. "I understand if you need time," he said. I don't want to lose you. Not over a misunderstanding." "Please, let me prove to you that I am telling the truth." Her eyes glistened as tears threatened to fall. She wanted to believe him, wanted to trust that the words he spoke were true. Yet her heart had been bruised, and she did not know if it could heal quickly enough to allow her to take that leap of faith. I need to think," she said softly, turning her gaze toward the window. The fading sunlight highlighted the curve of her cheek, the subtle tension in her shoulders. She felt torn, caught between the fear of being hurt and the desire to believe in the possibility of love. He nodded, understanding her hesitation. "Take all the time you need," he said. "I will wait. I will be here." His voice was calm, patient, unwavering, and it was that steadiness that began to chip away at the walls she had built. Over the next few days, their interactions remained careful and measured. She still kept her distance, but there were small signs of change. A fleeting glance here, a subtle softening of her expression there. She listened when he spoke, though she did not always respond, and she accepted the small gestures he continued to offer. Water, fresh bread, quiet words of encouragement. One evening he found her again in the garden behind the inn. The soft glow of the lamps illuminated the plants, casting gentle shadows across the ground. She was tending to a small patch of herbs, her hands moving skillfully among the leaves and flowers. He approached slowly, careful not to startle her. "May I join you?" he asked gently. She hesitated for a moment, then nodded, stepping aside to make room. He sat down quietly, allowing the peaceful atmosphere of the garden to fill the space between them. For a few moments they were silent, listening to the rustle of the leaves, the distant sounds of the town, and the soft chirping of evening birds. Finally he spoke, his voice soft and steady. "I know it will take time," he said. "I know I cannot undo the hurt you felt, but I hope that in time you will see that I am honest, that my feelings for you are real." She looked at him, her eyes reflecting both doubt and hope. "It's not easy," she admitted.
I don't want to be hurt again. I don't know if I can trust so quickly."
He reached out, gently placing his hand near hers, though he did not touch it yet. "I will not rush you," he said. "I only ask that you let me show you with my actions that my words are true. I only love you. That has not changed, and it will not change." Her heart wavered at his words, the sincerity in his voice breaking through the walls of doubt she had built. She wanted to believe him, wanted to feel the warmth of trust and the possibility of love, but fear still held her back. They sat together in silence as the sun finally disappeared behind the hills, leaving the sky painted in deep shades of blue and purple. The night was calm, the stars beginning to appear one by one. In that quiet moment, something shifted between them. A small, delicate understanding, fragile yet real. She did not speak, but she did not leave either. She remained there, allowing him to be near, allowing herself to feel the comfort of his presence without fully surrendering to it. And he remained patient, quietly waiting, offering his presence as proof of his sincerity. It was not reconciliation, not yet, but it was a start. The first steps toward rebuilding trust had begun, fragile and uncertain, but alive with possibility. Each passing day would test them, but for now, in that quiet garden, they had taken the first step toward understanding and connection. And as they sat together under the night sky, both of them realized that despite the hurt, despite the fear, the bond they shared was worth fighting for. Something real had begun between them, a connection that could survive misunderstandings and doubt if they nurtured it with patience, honesty, and care. The days that followed were quieter than before, yet they carried a weight that neither of them could ignore. The Apache Maid moved through her work with the same efficiency as always, but there was a subtle change in her demeanor. She no longer avoided him entirely. Her glances lingered a little longer, her gestures softened slightly, and the tension that had clouded their interactions began to lift, albeit very gradually. He noticed it immediately. Every time their eyes met, there was a flicker of acknowledgement, a silent recognition that despite everything, they were still connected. His heart leapt each time, but he did not rush her. He understood that trust, once broken or shaken, would not be rebuilt overnight. Patience had become his constant companion, and he learned to express his feelings in small ways, helping with chores, sharing quiet moments, or simply being present without expectation. One late afternoon, the inn was calm. Most of the guests had gone to explore the surrounding town or were resting in their rooms. He found her in the garden once again, tending to the herbs and flowers with careful hands. The sun was low in the sky, casting a soft golden light across the garden, illuminating the gentle curves of her face and the concentration in her eyes. He approached slowly, feeling the familiar flutter in his chest. "Can we talk?" he asked gently. She looked up, her expression neutral but guarded. "I suppose," she replied quietly. Her voice carried a hint of hesitation, the kind that comes from a heart still wary of being hurt. He walked a few steps closer, careful not to crowd her, and took a deep breath. "I know I have made mistakes or at least caused misunderstandings," he began. "And I understand if you don't trust me yet. but I need you to know I only care about you. I only love you. Her eyes widened slightly, the words hitting her with a force she had not anticipated. She wanted to believe him, to feel the comfort and warmth of trust returning, but fear and pride still held her back. Words are easy, she said softly. Anyone can say things. How do I know you truly mean it? He reached out, slowly, deliberately, until his hand was near hers. Because I am not asking you to believe me just because I say it, he said. I am asking you to see it in my actions, in the way I wait for you, in the way I care for you, in the way I cannot bear the thought of losing you. I have never felt this way about anyone before. You are the only one in my heart. Tears threatened to fill her eyes, but she blinked him away. Her chest felt tight, her emotions swirling like a storm. She wanted to speak, to demand more proof, but the truth in his voice, in his eyes, was undeniable. It was raw and sincere, unadorned by flattery or pretense. I don't know if I can just believe everything instantly, she admitted, her voice trembling slightly. It's hard after what I saw. I felt hurt. I felt like I was not important to you. He shook his head gently, his gaze never leaving hers. You are more important to me than anything in the world, he said softly. What you saw was not real. I never laughed with anyone else the way I laugh with you. My heart belongs to you alone. I know it is hard to trust again, but I promise, if you let me, I will spend every day showing you that my love is true. Her hands trembled as she placed them over the herbs she had been tending, her fingers brushing the leaves with gentle tension. She wanted to believe him so badly, to feel the relief of letting go of doubt and hurt. But the fear lingered. How can I be sure? She whispered. He stepped closer, lowering his voice to a tender murmur. Look into my eyes, he said, and see my heart there. I will not lie to you. I cannot lie to you. You are everything to me. Please, trust me, even just a little. Let me prove that I mean what I say. For a long moment she hesitated, her mind racing with questions, doubts, and memories of the hurt she had felt. Then, slowly, almost imperceptibly, she lifted her gaze to meet his. The honesty she saw there, the vulnerability and sincerity, softened the edges of her doubt. He smiled gently, not broadly, but in a way that conveyed relief, hope, and love all at once. That's all I ask, he said quietly. A chance. That's all. She took a deep breath, feeling a warmth spread through her chest that had been absent for days. I will try, she whispered, her voice barely audible. It was not complete forgiveness, not complete trust, but it was a start. He reached out, this time taking her hand in his with careful tenderness. The touch was gentle, respectful, and full of the promise that his words carried. Thank you, he said softly. Thank you for giving me a chance. I won't waste it. As they sat together in the quiet garden, the tension between them began to ease. The golden light of the setting sun painted the sky in shades of orange and pink, the world around them soft and calm. The scent of lavender and rosemary mingled with the cool evening air, and for the first time in days a sense of peace settled over both of them. She allowed herself to relax slightly, feeling the comfort of his presence and the steady sincerity of his touch. It was not a moment of complete resolution. Not yet, but it was a turning point. The walls around her heart were beginning to crumble, and the bond they shared, though fragile, was growing stronger. He spoke quietly, not to demand attention, but to fill the silence with reassurance. I know it will take time, he said. I know that trust is not given lightly, but I will be here every day, showing you that my words are true. You are the only one I love, and I will do everything I can to make you feel safe, valued, and cherished. She listened, her heart softening further with each word. She wanted to believe him, wanted to feel the comfort of knowing that someone cared so deeply for her. And as she sat there holding his hand, she felt a small spark of hope, a gentle certainty that perhaps this time the connection they shared was real. The night began to settle over the town, and stars appeared one by one in the deepening sky. The garden was quiet, the world outside fading away, leaving only the two of them in the soft glow of evening. She looked at him, her eyes reflecting both the lingering fear and the growing hope. I think I can trust you," she said softly. "I will try." He smiled again, a mixture of relief and joy in his expression. "That's all I need," he said. "One step at a time, together. We will face everything together, and I will never let you down." For a long while they remained there, sitting quietly, holding hands, letting the peace of the moment wash over them. The tension that had plagued them for days began to fade, replaced by the warmth of understanding and the tentative beginnings of trust. In that moment, the world felt still, and the connection between them, though newly strengthened, felt unbreakable. They did not need to speak further. The unspoken words carried the weight of love, sincerity, and hope. She finally allowed herself a small, genuine smile, the first in days. "Thank you," she whispered, her voice soft but sincere, "for not giving up on me." He squeezed her hand gently. "I could never give up on you," he said. "Not now, not ever." The night grew deeper, and they slowly rose together, returning to the inn. The quiet understanding between them remained, unspoken yet powerful. It was a bond forged through honesty, patience, and the willingness to confront fear and doubt. As they walked side by side, the cool night air brushing against their faces, both of them realized that the journey of love was never easy, but it was worth every moment of struggle and uncertainty. What had begun as a fragile connection had grown stronger, resilient against the trials of misunderstanding and doubt. And though there would be challenges ahead, both of them knew, in the deepest parts of their hearts, that they were ready to face them together. Because love, when genuine and true, could weather any storm, heal any wound, and build bridges stronger than any fear. The following days were different from anything either of them had experienced before. The tension that had weighed heavily over their interactions had lifted, replaced by a quiet understanding and a growing sense of trust. The Apache Maid moved through her work at the inn with a newfound lightness, her steps no longer burdened by doubt or suspicion. Every glance she gave him carried warmth, a subtle acknowledgment of the bond that had begun to flourish between them. He noticed it immediately, and a sense of relief washed over him. For days he had worried that the misunderstanding would leave a permanent mark, that she might never truly believe in his love. Now he saw the subtle shifts, her soft smiles, her gentle nods, the way she allowed herself to linger near him, if only for a moment. Each small gesture told him that she was beginning to trust him, that the walls she had built around her heart were slowly coming down. Their days settled into a comfortable rhythm, filled with quiet moments and small joys. In the mornings he would help her carry baskets of fresh bread and produce from the market, sharing laughter and light conversation. She would teach him how to tend to the herbs in the garden, showing him which plants needed water and which needed sunlight, her patience and guidance making the work feel like a shared ritual rather than a chore. In the evenings, after the last guests had retired to their rooms, they would sit together in the quiet garden watching the sun dip below the horizon. The colors of the sky changed from gold to pink to deep purple, and the air was filled with the soft fragrance of lavender and rosemary. It was in these moments that they spoke freely, sharing stories of their childhoods, their hopes, and their dreams for the future. Each word, each laugh, each gentle glance strengthened the bond between them, knitting their lives closer together. One afternoon, as the sun cast long shadows across the inn, they found themselves alone in the kitchen. She was arranging plates for the evening meal, and he was helping her carry bowls of soup to the tables. The room was filled with warmth, not just from the sun but from the quiet comfort of shared work. "You've become quite good at this," she said, a hint of amusement in her voice. He smiled, wiping a bead of sweat from his forehead. "I've had a good teacher," he replied. Their eyes met, and for a moment neither spoke. The air between them was charged with a quiet intensity, the kind that comes from mutual understanding and unspoken affection. Later that evening, as they walked through the town square, the streets were alive with activity. Children ran through the dust, merchants called out their prices, and the smell of fresh bread and spices filled the air. They walked side by side, sometimes in comfortable silence, sometimes exchanging quiet words and laughter. The townsfolk noticed the change in her demeanor as well. She seemed lighter, more confident, more at ease, and when she smiled at him, it was clear to anyone watching that there was a bond between them that was real and undeniable. As the days turned into weeks, their connection grew stronger. They began to share small rituals that were uniquely theirs. He would leave a fresh flower by her workstation each morning, and she would respond with a quiet nod or a small smile. They would meet in the garden in the evenings, tending to the herbs and plants together, their hands brushing occasionally, sending shivers of delight through both of them. One day the inn received news that a traveling merchant would be staying for several days. The Apache Maid and he worked together to prepare the rooms, the shared labor bringing them even closer. They laughed at small mistakes, helped each other lift heavy bundles, and celebrated the completion of their tasks with quiet satisfaction. Their teamwork was seamless, a reflection of the trust and understanding they had nurtured over the past weeks. During a quiet moment in the garden, she finally spoke words that had been held back for a long time. "I was afraid," she admitted softly, her voice barely above a whisper. "I didn't know if I could trust you again after what I saw." He took her hand gently, holding it as he had done countless times before. "I understand," he said, "and I am grateful that you chose to give me a chance. I will spend every day proving that I am worthy of your trust." She looked into his eyes, seeing the sincerity that had first drawn her to him, the honesty that had slowly broken through her doubts. "I believe you," she said, her voice steady now, filled with a quiet certainty. "I believe that you only love me." The words were simple, yet they carried immense weight. They marked the culmination of the journey they had taken together, from misunderstanding and doubt to trust and love. In that moment, the bond between them felt unbreakable, a quiet promise of devotion that neither could ignore. As the sun set, painting the sky with hues of orange and pink, they sat together in the garden, their hands intertwined. The air was filled with the gentle rustling of leaves, the distant sounds of the town settling into evening, and the quiet heartbeat of two people who had found each other amidst uncertainty and fear. In the following days, they continued to build their life together. They shared meals, worked side by side at the inn, and spent quiet evenings in the garden. Each day brought small moments of joy, from shared laughter to gentle touches, each one reinforcing the love they had fought so hard to protect. The townsfolk began to notice the change in her as well. She was no longer the distant, guarded woman who had arrived at the inn. She moved with confidence, smiled freely, and carried herself with the quiet pride of someone who had found both purpose and love. And when she walked with him through the town, her hand in his, it was clear to everyone that their bond was genuine and strong. One evening, as the stars began to appear in the night sky, they sat together on a small bench in the garden. The air was cool and filled with the scent of flowers, the quiet of the town creating a perfect backdrop for reflection. "I never imagined," she said softly, "that I could feel this way. That someone could care for me so deeply, and that I could trust again." He smiled, brushing a strand of hair from her face. "Love is not always easy," he said. "It takes time, patience, and courage. But when it is real, it is worth every challenge." She leaned against him, feeling the warmth of his presence and the steady rhythm of his heartbeat. "I am glad I gave you a chance," she whispered. "And I am grateful that you trusted me," he replied. "We have both learned that misunderstandings can happen, but love, when nurtured, can overcome anything." In the weeks that followed, their bond continued to strengthen. They shared dreams of the future, spoke openly of their hopes, and faced the small challenges of life together. Their love became a quiet force, a steady presence that brought comfort and joy to both of them. The Apache Maid found herself smiling more often, laughing freely, and feeling a sense of peace she had not known before. And he found that every day with her was a gift, a chance to cherish someone who had captured his heart completely. One day as they tended to the garden together, he paused and looked at her with a soft smile. "We have come a long way," he said gently, "from misunderstanding to trust, from doubt to love." She nodded, her eyes reflecting the same warmth and certainty that had grown in his heart. "Yes," she said softly, "and I am glad we did. I cannot imagine my life without you now." He took her hands in his, holding them with gentle firmness. "And you will never have to," he said. "I will always be here, loving you, supporting you, and facing life together. You are my heart, my world, my everything." The Apache Maid felt a swell of emotion, a quiet joy that filled her entire being. She had feared losing him, had doubted the strength of their bond, yet here they were, stronger, closer, and more certain of their love than ever before. As the sun set behind the hills, casting the garden in golden light, they sat together in silence, content in the knowledge that they had found something rare and precious. Their love was no longer fragile or uncertain. It was steady, resilient, and true, and in that quiet moment, they knew that no misunderstanding, no fear, and no doubt could ever undo what they had built together. They had faced the challenges of the heart, overcome them with patience and honesty, and emerged stronger, bound by trust, respect, and a love that would endure. As the stars filled the night sky, the Apache Maid leaned against him, and he held her close. The world around them was quiet, but inside their hearts spoke a language of understanding, devotion, and unwavering love. Together, they had found a connection that would last a lifetime, a bond born of sincerity, tested by challenges, and strengthened by the courage to trust and love fully. And so, their story, once threatened by misunderstanding and doubt, ended not with fear or separation, but with the quiet certainty of two hearts joined together, ready to face the future hand in hand, stronger than any obstacle that might come their way. They snapped